Hey Internet, here's another episode of doing things the hard way. I'm working on a outdoor sauna build, and my wife and I decided to use this kind of river rock pebble tile, which we've got mortared to the wall and ready for grout. And before I started, I looked online to, went to YouTube University to try to learn how to do this, and the videos kind of left me more terrified than informed. So I thought that I would take a crack at explaining my process, which is kind of an amalgamation of the videos and then some blogs that I found on tiling. I'm not going to spend too much time on the arrangement, because I think that the honest truth is, you can see here, no matter what you do, you're going to see lines. So really the best way to do it, and this is detailed on other sources online, is to intentionally leave spaces in your sheets, and you're just going to have to pull off a whole bunch of rocks and place them individually. And I think, you do a few of those and you start to break up the line, at least to the point that you're not immediately drawn to it. I think down there is going to be questionable, but we'll see. Anyway, so I've mixed my mortar, my grout. In the traditional way, it's pretty dry, maybe a little bit too dry, but I think that might help get it stuck to the wall. And I'm just going to kind of show you what I'm working with. I'm going to be using this rubber float, which is probably not the right thing, and I'm not a tile person at all, but I found that it's good at getting some traction and really driving the grout underneath the rocks, because I think that unlike other tile, you're not just simply trying to push it down in between the tiles, you're actually trying to get it underneath, because these are all like three-dimensional shapes. So I'll get some up on the wall and start spreading it around, and then check in. The first big difference is just simply how much you are losing due to gravity. So that's new and exciting. But I think the trick is you get a big chunk on there, and then you want to work it from all directions. You're going to go up and down. I'm using the narrow end of the trowel because I think that it's negotiating the contours of the rock a little better than the wide. It's just too much of an average. So you can see there, if there's like big holes, it just means you need to hit it from another angle. So I'm just gonna keep working my way and picking up the pieces that I dropped and just keep at it. Okay, I've got most of this on the wall. I have to make a small little batch here. A couple thoughts. I ended up switching to the, not this one, I guess the regular tile trowel. I'm not sure what this one's called, but it's got that rubber coating on the hard plastic coating, because too much was getting stuck to my rubber float, and honestly it just wasn't prepared for how much was going to fall off the wall. So I just was working with really small batches, pressing it in almost a little handful at a time. And you can see this looks kind of terrible, but we'll get to that. So the difference with compared to other tiling is that you're just not going to get it super clean at first. And normally you would press it in with the trowel and then wipe it in 20 minutes and more or less be done. In this case, what we're doing is actually using the sponge as a trowel, and you can see that I can smooth the grout considerably, and then we just have to wait much longer than you normally wait, just because these gaps are so big. So, in the bag it says like 20 minutes or so before you can wipe. In this case, it's probably more like 40 to an hour. So this stuff here has been sitting about 45 minutes, and so I'll wipe this down and show you what it's gonna look like. So you can see some places where it's like, low and not that good. And just this is a very damp sponge, very dry sponge. It's been squeezed and wrung out, and I'm actually applying a decent amount of pressure. And by doing that, I can fill in those voids. can see that's already looking a lot better. And again, this is like 45 minutes after. It's a little bit of a cold day, but still, it's a long time. It just takes a lot of patience. I think if you did this too soon, you'd run the risk of just pushing the grout around. I'm also going in a circular motion, kind of back and forth, all angles. Again, same idea, you need to kind of work these stones from all directions to get it smooth. But you can see this sponge troweling, while not quite finished, is getting us a lot closer. There's obviously a risk here of getting too much water on the grout and therefore making it weaker. But I think by waiting an extra long time, I can actually be pretty forceful with it. And I think, again, just being mindful with your sponge, really wringing it out and even shaking it out. You don't want really any water on there, but yeah, we're getting there. Another note is I would rinse your sponge out pretty regularly. You do run the risk of grout sticking to the sponge, and then you just start dragging the rest of the grout with you, which you don't want to do. Okay, and then you can spot check for any pock marks or low spots. And again, I'm kind of just spreading it around, but I'm also reducing the overall level. All right, we'll let that set up. So here's the inside, almost an hour later, and you can see I can still just barely push this around with my finger. So I'm gonna give this even a little bit longer before I go in here and do another pass. So out here, kind of the same thing. You can see this is a pretty, it looks terrible right now. And this has been setting up for about 40 minutes to an hour. Definitely taking advantage of the colder temperatures today. It's in the mid 40s. I will have a heater in there just to help cure, but if you were doing this on a much warmer day, you'd probably want a hand just to keep up with all of it. But you can see, even then, just with a little bit of pressure in this circular motion, even these bigger gaps, I can kind of massage them into place. And I think the trick is not doing this too early in the process, or you're just gonna smush the grout around. But I think this is gonna work. Just a side note, anytime I'm working on a surface that is delicate or I want to spread my weight out, I actually just use 2-inch XPS foam. It's super rigid. As long as I don't stand right in the center, it won't really crack under my weight. And it's waterproof for the most part. And it's easy to break it into the size pieces that you need. And easy to make little stepping stones for yourself. And they just will rest on the highest points right on the rocks, so they won't damage the grout. Just want you to see the condition of the grout before the second pass, and you can see it's not perfect at all, and it's been sitting up for a while, but you'll see that with a very lightly damp sponge, it's really able to heal all that up, and we'll just keep doing these progressive passes, and it should get finer and finer, almost like sandpaper. You can see where the first pass I left these lines with the sponge, and on with the new pass, those are really starting to fade away. So I kind of go against the grain, I guess you could call it, of the first pass with the second pass. And you can see that it will clean those up nicely. So here's the wall after the first pass with the sponge trowel. You can still see there's some spots that aren't totally perfect, but I think it's gonna be fine for now. We'll let this set up and then we'll do another pass in maybe another 45 minutes or so. Another side note, for each series with the sponge, I'm starting with 2 clean pails of water. In this case, I'm using warm water. I don't know if it matters, but I thought I'd call that out. One for first rinse and then second rinse. And I'll do that with new fresh water for every pass. So the first sponging is starting to set up and ready for a second pass. But I wanted to talk about another technique that I had read about, but I haven't seen in any videos. And that's to use a kind of a bristle brush. You could use a nylon scrubbing brush. This looks, I'm not sure what this was. I just found it. It looked like I could trash it. And if you had used the brush earlier in the process when the grout was a little softer, you could use it to kind of set your depth by kind of getting there and carving it out. It's a little late to do that at this point, but what I am realizing is that it gives you a really nice definition of the edges, whereas the sponging alone has like a little bit of a softer transition between the rock and the grout. So, I mean, that might just be a preference, but I started getting into it and I think I like it. So I'm gonna go ahead and brush this all down and then go inside and do the floor. As far as technique with the brush, I've in this case I've rinsed it out and it's just barely damp. Again, I've kind of shook it out as best I could so not to add a ton of water to the wall. And I'm just gonna go in here in a circular motion. You can kind of scrub back and forth. Again, you kind of need to go in every direction with the rock. But I'm gonna go back and forth a few times and then finish with a circular motion so you can't see the brush strokes. So this is about 3 days later. It's been about 50 degrees or so out here, so I want to give it extra time. It seems like it's set up pretty nicely. It's a little bit chalky in their surface, which I think is maybe because I didn't keep it moist, and also maybe just from the sponging technique that we used. I was also noticing I used a little bit of this magic acid during surface prep, and I actually think it probably etched the stone just a little bit and enough that the grout actually stay in the rocks. So I'm actually going to do a brief pass with the magic acid just to see if I can kind of clean it all up. I'll dilute it a bunch so it's shouldn't cause any damage, but let's find out. So here I'm using a heavily diluted magic acid spray and scrub, and you can see I'm starting to get the color of my rocks back here. So I'll do that for a little bit longer and then we'll get this sealed up. Okay, so after several applications of the muriatic acid and a lot of elbow grease, I think we've got most of the grout off of the tiles. I think it looks pretty good. I think the muriatic acid had done more etching on the stone than I expected, and so it made them very porous and ready to accept the grout, which I think just made it a little bit more difficult to clean up. But I think it did come off for the most part, and I think we're gonna go ahead and seal it up. Inside the floor, see the same thing. Just waiting for this to dry a little bit, but I think I'm gonna call that a success. For sealing, I'm gonna use this brand new can here of Eco Pro Coat Acri-Soy. We came across this while working on the house, and it's pretty cool. I've used it to seal concrete, but it'll seal wood, tile, stone, grout, just about anything. So I'm excited to try it here on the tile, and as usual, I'll put a link in the notes. Okay, got the sealer on, and it's been about a day, and pretty happy with the way it turned out. ended up using a that same brush, this kind of like, say it's probably nylon, but it's a little softer than the typical bristle brushes. So I use that as my first application to really get it into the grout and into the tile. And then went back over it with a sponge and just kind of blotted it just to make sure that there wasn't any puddling. And you can see here, there's a couple spots where it got a little thick and it's kind of milky. If I remember correctly, eventually that will seep in and should clean up pretty nicely. And if not, I could always do some spot repair there. Just a note about that sealer. This Acri-Soy wants the surface to be etched. So it was actually fortuitous that I needed to use Acid Magic to clean all the grout off. So by doing that, I kind of opened up the stone and it became a little bit more porous. So that should help the sealer bond. But there you go. I'm definitely not a tile person or a trades person really at all. I just do this for fun, and there was just really nothing else online that I felt like gave a good explanation on how to deal with this natural stone pebble mosaic tile. It's not easy. It's a lot of elbow grease, so I can understand why it's not more popular, but I'm really happy with the way it turned out. It feels pretty great on your feet. I mean, I think again, depending on what you want, you could go more recessed. I could have tried to dig more of the grout out, but it's actually really nice as a floor. And just for all the sauna people that are going to roast me, I'm not actually going to have a outlet in my sauna. That's just temporary, so I'd have power in here for a little bit. And yeah, so on to the next. But thanks for watching, and hopefully for somebody out there this is helpful. All right, cheers.